there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my August wrap up. In the month of August I read 13 books and I'm here to talk about all of them. So the first book that I read was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this was a reread for me. I listened to it on audiobook for the very first time before I read it physically, and I absolutely loved this. This is about a girl who lives in Latin America and she is feeling very much like she doesn't fit into her life, and she is being forced into doing things that she does not want to do, and she feels liberated when she discovers that she likes to write poetry and she can really find herself. So this one has a lot to do with religion and thoughts on religion and beliefs, but also about femininity and growing into your own body, and it also has to do with coming of age, like falling in love, being a teenager, and also a lot to do with poetry and the love of words and how it helps you with your identity. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I definitely recommend the audiobook if you haven't tried listening to it before, because Acevedo narrates it herself and she brought it to light in a different way than I'd ever experienced. The first time that I read this book I was really focused on all of the themes going on about femininity and about religion that I kind of missed over and skipped over the focus on poetry and identity, and as a poet I could really relate to those feelings this time around now that I had this reread and could focus on them. I read a number of books in reading vlogs, so you might have heard about these ones before, but I'll go through them again anyway. So the first one was another reread for me, and this was Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This one follows a girl who gets accepted into this very prestigious university. However, her family and her tribe don't really understand or believe that she should go, and Binti decides to sneak out and go anyway, but along the way tragedy and disaster happens. It's a science fiction novel and it's a novella, so it's very short, but I think it does a very good job of talking about the themes that it's trying to drive home, of colonialism, of culture, and also about what you want in life and going after it and getting it. I also think that the friendship that forms in this one is quite uncanny, and we're kind of introduced to these creatures that are so different from anything I've seen before, and I really like it. The writing style is very straightforward and to the point, and I think it does a very good job of being a quick read but also an impactful read. Then I read The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky, and this is one that in the beginning, the first 50 pages, I really didn't like it, but by the end of the book, I really liked it. So in this one we follow Charlie, who's a 15-year-old teenager, and he's a wallflower. He kind of spends his life observing other people and not really participating and being involved and getting to feel and do things for himself. And this is a book about the year that he decides that he's going to stop being a wallflower and he's going to try and participate in his own life. It's told in the format of letters sent to you, the reader, an anonymous person, and personally for me I don't think that format worked very well, and I struggled with it quite a lot. I have read other books that are in the format of letters before, but I think for this one it would have been better if it just followed normal narration. I also felt like the mental health representation in this one is never explicitly stated, and it really helped me when I went and did some research and looked it up. I managed to not spoil myself in the process of doing this, but by knowing what the mental health representation was, I was able to better understand Charlie as a character and also the writing style. So I didn't connect much to Charlie as a character, and that lack of emotional connection is because of Charlie's condition and Charlie himself. I think it's good if you know that that has to do with what he is processing, but it's hard when you don't know what it is. So that's why I struggled a lot in the beginning, but once I accepted that and I got past that, I was able to really love Charlie. He's just such a genuinely nice person trying to do his very best and not always getting it. There's a beautiful teacher-student relationship in this one, and the friendships in this are messy, are teenagery, but also quite adorable. There's a lot of sadness and a lot of darkness in this one. Charlie observes other people and he really sees their stories and brings them to light, and their struggles as well as their happy moments, and I really enjoyed seeing that. By the end of this book I was feeling very bittersweet. Then I read 4, which is a short story collection that has to do with the Divergent series. It's by Veronica Roth. I had not read the Divergent series in years, but I was still able to really enjoy reading this short story collection. So in this one we follow 4, who is a main character in the original trilogy, and it's all about things that happened before the original trilogy, so it's a prequel, and it kind of overlaps a little bit with Divergent at the end there, but mostly it's just a prequel. I really liked getting into Thor's head and getting to see more about his backstory, his own experience with being dauntless, and the world building is just so seamless. You just get immersed in the world so quickly. The point of view makes it so easy to fall into the characters' minds and actions, and even though at the end I was feeling a bit iffy about the romance, Thor quickly did something that made me feel perfectly comfortable with the romance all over again, and I had such a blast reading this one and getting all of those nostalgic feels. Up next we have The Black God's Drum by P. Djeli Clark, and I did read this one also for my dissertation. So in this one we follow Creeper, who is this young girl, and she wants to go on this airship. But while she is just walking around one day, she overhears these people talking about an Haitian scientist who makes the Black God's drums and knows how to do this, which is very, very valuable information, and Creeper decides that she's going to use it to pave her way onto this airship. I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. I had such a blast reading this one. I think that it did a very good job of being very plot driven and plot focused, and because it's very short it has to move forwards fairly quickly, but it didn't feel rushed and it didn't feel too slow. I also think it did a very good job again with the world building because it was seamless. We got a lot of history, we got to know everything about this world, but without it being info dumpy and with it being woven into the plot and the storyline very, very well. I liked the characters. We have a secondary character who is black, disabled and bisexual, which was surprising to me. I didn't expect to see that representation. And we've also got another character who is blind, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and I also really liked seeing her as well. I just thought it was a very great story, and how it all came to a boil and a climax at the end there really just tugged on my heart, and I was smiling while I was reading and just racing through it all in one sitting, so I definitely recommend this book. It's got steampunky vibes as well, which is always a plus. Then I read two books that I was sent by Book Break UK. The first one is The Lamplighter by Jackie Kay, and this one is a play about British slavery. I really, really loved this, and this was actually a new favourite for me. So this play is hard-hitting because it's all about these different people's slave experiences, but it reads like a choreo poem more than a play. So while we have different characters and we have different scenes, the way that these characters intersperse their dialogue and speak together as a collective really made it seem like it was a collective struggle. However, each character does have their own individual story that they tell to you, so you can see that slavery is something that the individual feels, that the individual struggles with, but also it's a collective grief, it's a collective suffering because they all understand each other and the pains that they go through. It was a very difficult read, and as always for all of these books that I talk about in this video, I will have all of the content warnings that I can think of while I was reading down below, just in case you're new here. And then I read My Darling from the Lions by Rachel Long, and this one is a poetry collection. It's a poetry collection that focuses on blackness and the black experience and family, but also on identity and sexuality, and it goes into so many different themes, but I think it did a very, very good job with each and every single one of them. I was reading this and I was loving the imagery, I was loving the lyricism of this, the stanzas just flowed so well. I just thought it was really beautifully done. It was written so well and the themes were so good. There's not really much more you can say about poetry other than I really loved it, and I do recommend this one a lot. And I read New Moon by Stephenie Meyer, and this one was for my Read It Backwards series, so I won't talk about it too much here. I've got a link to that up above and down below. This one is the second book in the Twilight Saga, and it's one that focuses on the werewolves and Jacob and Bella more than Edward and Bella. The first book has to do with a human girl falling in love with a vampire and all of that paranormal romantic drama. I didn't really like this book. It's the book I like the least in the series, and I find it to be quite problematic and not very enjoyable, but you can see all of my reasons for the reasons why I don't like it in that video. Then we have my buddy read of the month, and that was Artemis Fowl and the Lost Colony by Eoin Colfer, and this one is the fifth book in the Artemis Fowl series. I've been buddy reading this series with Athena and we've been loving it together, so please do check Athena out. I'll have a link down below. I can't tell you about this one as usual, so I'll have to tell you about the first one again. I'm sorry, I just keep talking about this series and explaining the first plot to you, but we follow Artemis Fowl, and he is a teenage criminal mastermind, and he just wants to have all the money and all the power that he can, and he discovers that fairies do exist, and fairies have this ransom gold that they have to give you if you capture one of them. So he decides he's going to try and capture a fairy so that he can have that ransom gold, but fairies have magic, and that means it might be a bigger battle than Artemis bargained for. It is a high story, it is fantastic, and this one was also really enjoyable. What I can tell you about this one is that it starts to get more science fiction-y as well as fantasy, and time travel is involved in some ways. I did have a bit of trouble suspending my disbelief for this one at the beginning and suspending my disbelief at the end. I felt like it went a little bit too far and stretched the boundaries a bit too much for my liking, but at the same time it was still really good fun. While it goes beyond being a high story in this one, I am still so impressed that Eoin Colfer comes up with these new and fresh ideas of how to slip a heist in there at some point. So you still get that love that you get in the first one for a heist. We get fairies, we get magic, which is always absolutely fantastic. I love the main gang in this one that we kind of follow throughout the whole series. It's been growing and shrinking and changing over the course of a series, as is only natural. But in this one we also get introduced to a new character called Number One, and I really liked his character. And we also get introduced to a female human who was really interesting. I really liked her character as well, and I think she's going to add something great to the next series. And oh my goodness, the way this one ended and what it hinted at will be in the next book has me so excited to continue on. Then I read a new adult book, and that was Finding Joy by Adriana Herrera. Finding Joy is a new adult romantic novel. It's male romance, and it's set in Ethiopia. We have an expat from the US who's coming to Ethiopia to do his job, and he meets Elias there, who is an Ethiopian who works there, and they start to crush on each other. However, in Ethiopia same-sex relationships are illegal, so they have to be very careful, and as well as that, it's got a lot to do with being an expat living in Ethiopia, what it's like for Ethiopians to experience these expats, and also about being part of the LGBT plus community in a place where it encourages you to stay closeted, where you can't be open and free. And I thought it was really good. I just loved the romance in this one so much. Adriana does a very good job of writing characters that have healthy communication, and yet there is still conflict in the book. There's still things that they both need to work through. The characters develop so much. I especially loved Elias. I think he was such a calm and determined and controlled character, and he knew what he wanted, and he was working to get there all the way through this book, and I just admire those qualities so much. I was majorly impressed, and it was just so nice to see the Ethiopian culture and experience really dug deep into this novel. Adriana Herrera herself has lived in Ethiopia as an expat before, and we're getting Desta's point of view, who is the expat, so it's kind of a true to her account and experience explanations of the culture and her experience there as well, which was really nice to see. I really enjoyed reading this book, and I can't wait to read more by Adriana Herrera. She's one of my favourite new adult authors. And then the last three things I read were all Shakespeare. Surprise. So one of the first things I read were the Sonnets of Shakespeare. I really enjoyed them so much. Romantic poetry is not really my thing, so I was not looking forward to it, and I'm kind of hit and miss when it comes to classic poetry as well, but the Sonnets blew me out of the water. I really enjoyed the way they were written. They were beautiful. His descriptions of things were A+, and some of the poems were a bit difficult and a bit hard to understand, but if you take your time to read them and really understand them, you will get there. My favourite poems were 27, 138, and also the one that goes, Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Those three were absolutely fantastic, with 27 being my number one favourite. Here's my complete works. There you go. So for plays, I read Henry V. I read Henry V, and I thought this was very interesting. It follows Henry V and this kind of war. He's trying to take France, and he wants to have the French throne as well, so he decides that he's going to go to war with France, and that's what this one is about. I thought the beginning, it it was okay. I think it was okay. I found that there was a lot of secondary characters having banter that I didn't particularly care about, and that was a bit frustrating to have to read through that. However, it was also very, very beautifully written, and I like the themes of what is a king's responsibility and what is not a king's responsibility to the people. And also at the end, it was so funny. I could not stop cracking up at the romantic storyline because it was just miscommunication everywhere, but in a kind of comedy, humorous, intentional way, and it was fantastic, and it was a great way to end the play, absolutely laughing. And then I'm going to put this down, it's so heavy. Then I read an array of Shakespeare shorts, and I'm going to count that as one book because they're not long enough to be their own thing, but they're not short enough to be like a novella even. So first thing I read was A Lover's Complaint by Shakespeare, and I thought it was an okay read. It was beautifully written, but I didn't particularly care about the message much. I read The Passionate Pilgrim by William Shakespeare, and again it's kind of the same thing. Beautiful to read, but all in all didn't really have any effect, and it's not one I'm going to remember. And then the last thing I read was The Phoenix and the Turtle, which is a poem by Shakespeare, and I really like that one. It's kind of metaphorical, so you can definitely think about things and try and pin your own meaning to it, and I'm pretty sure everybody's going to come up with different meanings. I had fun crawling the internet and seeing what different meanings were out there, but I also think it was very beautifully written, so I had a lot of fun thinking through that poem in particular. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in August. Please let me know in the comment section down below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? And what was your favourite read last month? Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!